Okay, so ready for a deep dive.
Always.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of ESG.
Yeah, ESG, it's everywhere you look these days.
It really is, and we're going full deep-sea exploration with this 100 Insight Tower report. And let me tell you, this thing is packed with more regulatory updates and market shakeups than you can shake a sustainably sourced stick at.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, just skimming through it, it reads like a laundry list of new EU regulations. We've got CSDDD, ECGTD, ESRS, SFTR, CBAM. I mean, how are businesses even supposed to keep up with all these acronyms, let alone what they actually mean for their operations?
Right, like it's alphabet soup over here. But that's why we're here, to break it down. So instead of getting lost in a sea of abbreviations, let's focus on the bigger picture. It seems like the overarching theme with all these regulations is to bake sustainability into the core of how businesses operate, no matter what industry they're in.
Exactly. It's about weaving sustainability into the very DNA of a company. And one of the most, I think, impactful examples of this is the CSDDD, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive.
Yeah, I know it.
Essentially, it holds companies accountable for human rights and environmental practices throughout their entire supply chain.
So no more turning a blind eye to what's happening on the ground in the name of profit margins, huh?
Precisely. Companies will actually need to demonstrate that they're actively addressing issues like human rights, working conditions, and environmental degradation. And at every stage of their supply chains, too.
Wow.
This has huge implications for sourcing raw materials, manufacturing processes, and even how companies select and monitor their suppliers.
That's a game changer. Talk about a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And it's not just about avoiding legal repercussions either. Companies are realizing that a proactive approach to ESG can actually strengthen their brand reputation, attract investors who prioritize sustainability, and even make them more resilient in the face of global challenges like climate change.
Okay, so the smart companies are realizing this isn't just a compliance headache, but potentially a competitive advantage.
You got it. Now, let's dive into some specific regulations that really highlight the shift. The Deforestation Regulation, or EUDR, is a prime example. It's going to have a major impact on companies importing products like coffee, soy, and wood.
Oh, interesting. Because now they need to prove their supply chains are deforestation-free. But how can they actually track something like that across such complex networks?
It's a massive undertaking. We're talking about tracing products all the way back to their origin, ensuring sustainable land management practices are being used, and verifying that indigenous communities' rights are being respected. This requires a level of transparency and traceability that many companies simply don't have in place right now.
I imagine this is going to require some serious investment in new technologies and partnerships. No more relying on a paper trail and a handshake?
Exactly. We're talking satellite monitoring, blockchain technology, and collaborating with local communities to verify information. It's a complex challenge, but the EUDR is forcing companies to rethink their entire approach to sourcing and supply chain management.
And it's not just about those exotic imports, right?
Yeah.
This report also highlights some changes hitting closer to home, like the right to repair movement finally gaining some real traction.
Yeah. This one is particularly interesting because it directly addresses that frustration we've all felt when a gadget breaks. And it's cheaper to replace than to repair.
Oh, tell me about it. My toaster broke last month,
Well, yeah.
and getting it fixed would have cost more than buying a new one. It's like they're designed to fall apart.
Exactly. But the right to repair is challenging this throwaway culture by empowering consumers to repair their belongings. It aims to make spare parts readily available, provide repair information to independent workshops and consumers, and design products with repairability in mind.
So it's about shifting the mindset from replace to repair. I like it, but what does this actually look like for companies in practice?
We're seeing companies like Apple and Samsung facing pressure to make their devices more repairable, offering access to official parts and repair manuals. It's a huge shift from the days of glued-shut phones and proprietary screws.
And hopefully it leads to more durable products in the long run. But while we're on the topic of consumer choice, the report also touches on another important trend, the crackdown on greenwashing.
Right. Consumers are becoming increasingly aware of greenwashing tactics, and they're demanding more transparency and accountability from companies.
Yeah, it's not enough to just slap a green leaf on your product and call it a day anymore. Consumers want proof, right?
Absolutely. They want to understand the real environmental impact of their purchases, and they're calling out companies that make misleading or unsubstantiated claims.
So what does this increased scrutiny mean for companies?
Well, it means companies need to walk the talk when it comes to their environmental claims. Vague statements and greenwashed marketing campaigns simply won't cut it anymore.
It's about backing up those claims with hard data, transparent practices, and third-party verification.
Precisely. And this leads us to another crucial aspect highlighted in the report: how businesses are responding to this ESG wave, or in some cases, trying to catch up. What's fascinating is that we're seeing companies turning ESG into a competitive advantage.
Okay, so it's not just about avoiding penalties anymore. It's about getting ahead of the curve.
You got it. Take Pandora, for example. They went all in on circularity, shifting to 100% recycled gold and silver in their jewelry.
I remember that making headlines. But what's interesting is that wasn't just a PR stunt. It actually required a fundamental overhaul of their supply chain.
Exactly. They had to find new suppliers, establish new sourcing practices, and even rethink their manufacturing processes to accommodate recycled materials. It was a risky move, but it paid off.
Because it positioned them as a leader in sustainable luxury. Consumers are willing to pay a premium for that kind of commitment.
Absolutely. And then there's Michelin, a company not typically associated with cutting-edge sustainability. They're tackling the notoriously difficult issue of tire waste.
Tires are everywhere, and they take forever to decompose. What are they doing exactly?
Michelin is investing heavily in tire recycling plants and technologies, aiming to create a closed-loop system where old tires become a valuable resource for new products.
So instead of piling up in landfills, those old tires could be turned into playgrounds, running tracks, or even new tires.
Yeah.
Talk about turning trash into treasure. But these examples, while impressive, are still largely driven by big corporations with deep pockets. What about smaller businesses? How are they navigating this ESG shift?
That's a crucial point. The report acknowledges that smaller companies often face resource constraints and may struggle to keep up with these rapid changes. However, it also highlights the important role large corporations can play in driving change down their supply chains.
So the big players can actually help level the playing field by supporting their smaller suppliers in adopting more sustainable practices.
Precisely. It's about collaboration and knowledge sharing, not just competition. And this is where initiatives like LVMH's approach come in. They're actively engaging with their suppliers to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, which are often the most significant part of a company's environmental footprint.
Scope 3 emissions, that's the emissions from a company's entire value chain, right? Everything from the materials they source to how their products are transported and even disposed of.
That's right. And it's a complex beast to tackle. LVMH is setting ambitious targets for their suppliers, providing them with resources and support to reduce their environmental impact.
It's about recognizing that sustainability is a shared responsibility. But all this talk about emissions and supply chains can feel a bit abstract. What about the tangible impacts? How is this actually changing the products we buy and use every day?
Well, this focus on sustainability is driving some fascinating innovations across industries. Remember our earlier discussion about agrivoltaic?
Oh, yeah. Combining solar energy production with agriculture on the same land, that's still blowing my mind.
It's a perfect example of how sustainability is driving innovation and creating new possibilities. Instead of competing for land, solar energy and agriculture can coexist and even complement each other.
Solar panels providing shade for crops, reducing water evaporation, and generating clean energy. Talk about a win-win. It makes you wonder what other creative solutions are out there just waiting to be discovered.
And that's what's so exciting about this whole ESG movement. It's pushing us to think differently, to challenge the status quo, and to find innovative solutions to some of the world's most pressing challenges. But it's not just about technological innovation. This report also emphasizes the importance of transparency and accountability.
Right. With all the greenwashing out there, it's more important than ever for companies to back up their claims with solid evidence. That's where ESG audits and reporting frameworks come in, right?
Exactly. Investors and consumers alike are demanding greater transparency from companies, and as a result, there's a growing emphasis on rigorous ESG audits to verify the validity of companies' sustainability claims.
No more fudging the numbers or hiding behind vague pronouncements.
It's about holding companies accountable for their impact and providing stakeholders with the information they need to make informed decisions. And this increased scrutiny is leading to a wave of new ESG reporting frameworks and standards.
Like the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards we touched upon earlier.
Exactly. These frameworks are helping to standardize ESG reporting, making it easier for investors and consumers to compare companies' performance and identify true sustainability leaders.
It's about creating a level playing field and empowering stakeholders to make informed decisions. But with so many different frameworks emerging, is there a risk of creating confusion and fragmentation?
It's a really good point. It seems like every organization and its dog is coming out with their own ESG framework these days. How can the average person, or even a company trying to do the right thing, make sense of it all?
It's definitely a challenge. But the good news is there's a growing movement towards harmonization and consolidation in the ESG reporting landscape.
So instead of a million different metrics, we're moving towards a more standardized approach. What's driving that?
Well, investors are demanding it. They need reliable, comparable data to make informed decisions about where to put their money. And companies are realizing that a fragmented reporting landscape creates unnecessary complexity and costs. It's in everyone's best interest to streamline this process. Makes sense. But even with standardized reporting, actually implementing these ESG principles is no walk in the park, right? It's one thing to report on your emissions, but actually reducing them requires real operational change.
Absolutely. This isn't just about ticking boxes and generating reports. It's about fundamentally rethinking how businesses operate from the ground up. And that requires a cultural shift from the C-suite to the factory floor.
It's about embedding sustainability into the very fabric of a company's DNA, as we talked about earlier. But that can't happen overnight. It's a journey, and there are bound to be bumps along the way.
For sure. The report doesn't shy away from the challenges. There will be costs associated with transitioning to more sustainable practices. There will be resistance to change from entrenched interests, and there will be difficult trade-offs to navigate along the way.
But it seems like the companies that view these challenges as opportunities rather than roadblocks will be the ones that ultimately succeed in the long run.
Precisely. This report isn't just a dry analysis of regulations and trends. It's a call to action. It's about recognizing the urgency of the challenges we face and embracing the opportunity to create a more sustainable and equitable future.
And it's not just about businesses, is it? It's about all of us as consumers, investors, and citizens using our collective power to demand better.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and wait for businesses or governments to solve these problems for us. We need to be informed, engaged, and vocal about the kind of future we want to see. And that starts with understanding the complexities of ESG and demanding transparency and accountability from the companies we support.
Well said. This deep dive into the 100 Insight Tao report has been eye-opening, to say the least. It's clear that ESG is reshaping the business world as we know it.
It's no longer a niche concern, it's the future of business. And the companies and individuals that embrace this shift will be the ones that thrive in the years to come.
It's about recognizing that sustainability isn't just good for the planet, it's good for business. And that's a message worth spreading.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We encourage you to explore the resources mentioned in the show notes and continue learning about this ever-evolving landscape.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What insights resonated with you? What questions do you still have? Join the conversation